Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, my guest is currently in town for a Pacific Northwest tour. She's performing in Seattle in 2017, and then Oregon on 2018 and 2019. She's currently signed to Rhymesayers, which hosts other artists such as MF Doom, Brother Ali, Atmosphere. It's my pleasure to introduce Sa-Roc.
Hey.
There we go. How many people get you mixed up with Sa-Roc?
When I first started, I would get that a lot. Oh, like the alcohol.
I feel like the hyphen helps. I feel like it gives you a little breath. And
then the pronunciation, which people, I think naturally it rolls off the tongue. They want to say Saroc. I'm like, no, it's Sa-Roc.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe you need an accent. Maybe that would help.
I think it's good where it is. People just gotta get used to it.
There we go. That's my biggest thing. I tell my friends and other artists, you've made it when Alexa or Google understands what you're saying. Look at XXX Tentacion.
Oh, right.
People can pick up on that easily.
Exactly.
Well,
it took me a while to.
It's still awkward. I feel like I'm saying it wrong, and I feel like
exactly.
If someone actually is a big fan, they're gonna probably. I think it's Mexican almost. I don't. Tentacion. I don't know.
I think that pronunciation is, but it's interesting when you talk about naming yourself and because you want your name to be true to your identity and how you express yourself as an artist, but you also want people to be able to pronounce it when they read it.
For sure.
So Sa-Roc. I don't get that. I don't get Sa-Roc so much anymore.
Yeah, I've already been through a name change also. My original title was HHH NAST, and it stood for Hottest Hip Hop News and Sneaker Talk, which is a mouthful, right? So I tried to make it an acronym, HHH NAST, and people thought I was Triple H, the wrestler. So I just cut off the H's, and now it's just NAST.
Okay.
Very simple, you know?
Yeah. And then I was like, is it nasty?
Hey, see there? That's part of the marketing.
Right. So right. Get people talking about it.
Yeah. So. Tell me what it's like being signed to a record label like Rhymesayers. Did you ever feel there's two female artists now signed to the label, but did you ever feel you were a token woman hired there?
I guess no, because I guess you could feel that way about the entire industry. Women, we've had to fight for our position, and within hip hop, especially within the past, I would say 10 to 15 years, we weren't seeing women artists as frequently, and often when we were seeing them, there was one or two allowed to gain a certain level of popularity, and everybody else was kind of relegated to underground or just below the surface of mainstream. So I think it's just indicative of where the industry is, and now that we're seeing more and more artists from Megan to Cardi to Lotto, and they all have pretty good visibility. They are very extremely popular, and they're all existing at the same time. We're seeing more and more women be able to have that exposure and platform. So
what do you mean by be able to that? How did the music industry make it so that couldn't be a thing?
Say that one more time.
How was it actually a thing where women weren't able to have a higher spotlight in hip hop?
It's controlled by men. It's controlled by men. And where it was a shared culture before, where women were extremely vocal, and you had everybody from Queen Latifah to MC Lyte to Moni Love, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think when the content of the music started to skew a little bit more evidently more misogynist, that's when I think we saw a shift where women were kind of relegated to the background or side pieces, or you know what I mean,
right.
And the industry was allowed to control the narrative and push this kind of music and push this kind of artists, and women were pushed further and further to the back.
Do you think there was can you pinpoint what era you'd say that was?
I feel like we started seeing that because the last So there was Lauryn Hill. Her album came out in what, 98,
Okay.
I believe. Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And then her contemporaries, I think, who was around her time, or
Missy Elliott,
Missy,
Lil'
Eve,
Kim.
Lil' Kim, Foxy Brown. Eve came a little bit later, but
Oh.
Foxy Brown. And then I really would say maybe early 2000s or late 90s, early 2000s when we started to see like it thin out a little bit more,
When did you join, when did you start making hip hop? When you were like mid 20s, correct?
2008.
So you were like, you're like 20, how old were you? You were mid 20s, right? When you started like actually taking hip hop seriously?
I was in my 20s.
Okay. So I was just wondering, what were you doing between hip hop and like your mid 20s?
Trying to figure out life. I had left college and just was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I moved and, I wanted to travel and just figure out like what my place was. So I was just working a regular 9-to-5 retail and enjoying the new environment.
Because you moved, or?
Yeah, I moved. I moved from DC to Atlanta. And just kind of enjoying the new environment. I was doing some traveling, and it was one of those things that came to me. It found me as opposed to me finding it. So I was just, and I ended up like juggling what I would call real life with like my burgeoning career or development as a hip hop artist. So I was doing all the regular things, working 40 hours a week and on the management track at my job and figuring that out, figuring how to juggle that. But it was like kind of an additional lifeline for me, as I was finding my place within the culture and finding my place as a writer and finding my voice. It was it was just kind of like this kind of fantasy world away from the grind of, day-to-day work and all of those things, which I was good at, but not really happy with,
So you grew up in Washington, D.C., but you don't feel like you found yourself till you moved to Atlanta? Or how would you describe that move?
I think when I moved from Washington to Atlanta, I was a young adult, and who knows themselves as a young adult. But I think, when you're from a city, which DC is not small, but it's not huge. It's small. It's large, but it's small enough that you feel kind of suffocated because you end up seeing the same people and doing the same things and running in the same circles and stuff. And so I wanted to forge an identity and a piece of myself outside of this place that had raised me. And, I always wanted to just explore what I could be outside of that, environment. And there's something about being on your own and being independent and being in a place that's completely new where you have to fend for yourself and figure out things by yourself that forges the best from you. You know what I mean? So.
And why'd you choose Atlanta then out of like any place you move?
Why did I choose Atlanta? My first choice was New York.
Okay.
Honestly. But New York was too damn expensive.
Still is, right?
Exactly. It's gotten even more so. So, that was the plan. I was looking up property. I'm not property, but like I was looking up like rentals and stuff like that. But when I saw that you had to have like a broker to find a spot, I was like, this is too much.
Yeah.
And my sisters, I had family who lived in Atlanta and stuff too. So I was like, okay. There's a little bit of familiarity there. And I had visited when I was younger. So I was like, it's cool.
Okay. What was your dream job then when you were like growing up? Was it to be a hip hop artist?
No. It was actually to do something in science at first. I wanted to be a holistic wellness practitioner. And then
what is that?
Someone who treats imbalance in the body and disease in the body through herbs and natural like supplements, and understands that there's a connection between like mind, body, and spirit. And
That's
when those
Eastern
things are
medicine, right?
Eastern, and and when those things are not in alignment, there's other things that need to be addressed other than just like symptomatic bodily, like physical reactions to things. So I wanted to do that, and that kind of always stayed at the back of my mind because I was really into like herbs and stuff. And earlier I wanted to do something with like animals or like conservation biology, and so that's what, right before I left school, I was doing like a pre-grad program and doing a research project on the great apes, and I got like a job at the zoo and everything.
Oh, wow.
So like I'm super in animal, and like that's something that is still like in the back of my mind. Is something I want to do maybe 10 years from now, work with like conservation facilities like in different places in the world. So
Like a partnership. That would be a dope partnership.
yeah, I always used to remember PBS used to do these documentaries with like these celebrities, and they would talk about like endangered species. Like it would be like Gwyneth Paltrow or Leonardo DiCaprio or something, like talking about polar bears and like going to these like animal sanctuaries and stuff like that. And I was like, so I always look at that and be like, I would love to do something like that, you know?
Wow.
So we'll see.
Did you go like hiking and stuff in Washington? Are there like forests and stuff in Washington, D.C.? I've only been there like once or twice.
There are like parks and like nature preserves, but I never went hiking actually until I would say until I started traveling to like California, and we would go to like the redwood forest and stuff like that and go hiking through the woods. But I never went hiking. Never was like averse to it, but I don't know. Just I'm a city girl, so
yeah, I feel that. I have like
never had the opportunity to.
I have like hiking boots in my trunk.
I love that. I love that. See, I'm not one of those people who are like, hiking, boo. You know, I want to do it, but Atlanta has like some places, like some places in like North Georgia and like Tennessee and stuff where you can go hiking, but it's just one of those things you got to make a whole like trip out of it and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So, but I love nature. It's beautiful.
Yeah, here in Seattle, you just like drive down the street and you're in nature.
I love that.
It's interesting, like talking to like my older friends and family about like even within the past like let's say 50 years. So like my grandma, for example. I keep talking about my grandma. That's funny.
Oh, you love your grandma. Your
But she lives in like the Redmond area, which is like East Seattle.
Okay.
And I think she moved there like the 70s, right? And it was just like one small town and the rest was just forest. And within the past like 50 years, everything's been basically clear cut, and there's like huge malls and
oh wow,
it's
all
just
the development and stuff.
Yeah, Seattle's a super fast growing, because it's a tech city now. It used to be a fucking like port city. And like, you know what's really sad?
What?
I didn't realize when I was like in school that I was learning like Washington history. So I'd hear all this stuff about like Native Americans and like gold rushes, and I was just like spacing out, thinking it was just like we're just talking about like the United States in general. And I was like, oh shit, we're learning about Washington.
Oh,
and
interesting. So you were just zoned out.
I didn't realize it until like I left school that I put two and two together. It's like there's just so much history in Washington.
Yeah, I don't really know much about it outside of like musical influences out of like Seattle and Washington and stuff. So it's a beautiful place. Like every time I come to the Pacific Northwest, like just the change in environment, like the different types of trees, and it's really a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
You know?
So tell me about you were connected to like KXP though, which is like a Seattle thing. How'd you make that connection?
They actually reached out to us.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think the guy who did the interview with me,
I know his name. What's his name? It's
Gabriel.
Something.
Tedros.
Tedros.
Yeah.
There we go.
I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But we have a shared love for like science fiction, and he like did he worked with like one of my favorite like sci-fi speculative fiction authors, and like so it was just like instant like synergy or whatever. But he was a supporter of the music for a while, and he reached out, and we did the thing. I can't remember the name of the.
I think it's just called live performance or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Something
we did the
like
live
that.
performance and interview, which was fun.
Yeah, and then you've done like a tiny desk. What was that like? Because that's like, I feel like that's a lot of artists like dream to do something.
It was amazing. It was amazing, and that was another thing they reached out to us for,
Wow.
and that's something I've always wanted to do. Being from Washington D.C., growing up listening to NPR, and I've always wanted to do it in person.
Mm-hmm.
But when the opportunity, happened over the pandemic, and we just, we got our call, and we were super excited, and it was less about like the exposure, but just like to me, I felt like it anchored me to the city, because those things are very much, DC. And
I had no idea. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know it was from. Okay, wow.
Yeah, so I'd see, I was hyped to see like some of my favorite like go-go artists and stuff like that. Like the woman who like is, I don't know what her exact title, but she created Tiny Desk. Her name is Abby, and she makes it a point to bring on like local artists who have been very a part of forming DC music culture and culture in general. So there's a music genre called go-go. I don't know if are you familiar with it? Yeah. So like she's brought on Rare Essence, which they're like one of the first go-go bands in DC and stuff. And like I love how diverse it is. So like when I got the opportunity to do it, when we got the opportunity to do it, I was just like blown away and just super nervous and excited. And so, but it was cool.
So since you started like your artistry in Atlanta, do you say you're an Atlanta artist then, or a Washington, D.C.
I say I'm a DC artist.
Okay, wow.
Atlanta has definitely influenced and informed me as an MC, because like when I started, I was learning, in the midst of, with an Atlanta producer, Soul Messiah, my producer, he's from Atlanta.
Nice guy.
Yeah, he is a wonderful guy. And worked with, he's an Atlanta legend himself, but also worked with like music legends who were really, really crucial in pushing what we know as the Atlanta sound. Some of the first artists like Outkast and Goody Mob, whatever, who made their splash on like mainstream, who took hip hop from the South and made it a nationwide, thing.
I've had them on the podcast. Goody Mob.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
No bragging here.
Yeah, brag on that. Shoot, that's worth a brag. So that was really important in shaping my sound, and then like me developing as an artist, me not really knowing what I was doing, and then having to look to all of these people. Granted, they were transplants, the people, these MCs who were, collabing together and throwing shows and stuff like that.
But you're a transplant too then, yeah?
Huh?
You're a transplant
Absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. But that's funny that the DC is the same way now. Like they say the same thing about Atlanta. Like you rarely find someone who's actually from Atlanta. It's like a unicorn. Like, oh, you're from here? So everybody was from everywhere, like from Tennessee, New York, blah, blah, blah. But it's still like we were all influenced by like the culture that was that was the backdrop for, what we were creating and everything. So I definitely feel like because I was of age, when I moved to Atlanta, I still consider myself a DC artist, and I'm still trying to make that known, because when I first started rhyming, people thought I was from everywhere. She's from New York. She's from New Jersey. People said Chicago. People, everywhere but DC. But, the music history and being a part of Washington, DC's artistic community is really important to me.
Yeah.
DC has produced some really fine artists, writers, etc. And the city to me has poured so much into me. It's really important for me to be considered amongst that community.
Yeah.
And Atlanta is like my second home, for sure. So I guess I would be a DC, Atlanta artist because I don't want to leave Atlanta out. Atlanta has been so much a part of making me who I am.
Who are some like Washington D.C. artists even? It's kind of escaping me right now.
Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
Put some respect on DC. Okay. But Duke Ellington.
All right.
Of course, Wale.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think some of the other.
Because that's like, isn't it?
I feel like Peaches and Herb might be from. That's like old school. I can't even really. I like took her way back with that one. They might be from DC. And then there's like other dope like artists who didn't exactly hit like mainstream, but are dope in their own right. There's Odyssey, who's amazing producer and rapper who tours all over the world. It's just so many people, and I'm probably just leaving people out because they're not at the front of my mind. But
it's weird because like I'm from Washington, so like I'll say Washington, and other people say, yeah, I'm from Washington too, and you mean like Washington D.C. So it's like
we don't ever say Washington though. Just
oh,
like
you don't.
DC.
You just say D.C.
Yeah.
Wait, what does D.C. even stand for?
District of Columbia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna get you there. I don't even.
Get me. That is hilarious.
So you started around 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
You got signed around like 2016, right?
Yeah.
So what was that time like in between? Like, were you part of like the Atlanta music scene?
Yeah, it was interesting because there were so many opportunities to perform in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
There was always a show or something. There was always, because when I started rhyming, like I was involved in the cultural community there, activist community and stuff. So like a lot of those things, the independent hip hop shows and like the fundraisers and cultural events and stuff like that were in alignment. So I was always being tapped for, and other artists were always being tapped to perform, and so I got a lot of opportunities to like cut my teeth and hone my craft and stuff. And then a lot of artists had a lot of agency in terms of what they were able to do in terms of working. They were their own promoters. They were able to just book the clubs and stuff like that.
Even like in the early 2000s?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was really dope. And then when I got big enough, we started booking, creating my own shows. I started doing my own shows, throwing my own shows. And then we all were kind of like working together. We would create songs together. We would hop in each other's videos. So it was really, really dope. And then right around the time, I feel like when like trap started popping, it shifted. And there was a shift from celebration of local Atlanta artists to looking outside of Atlanta for talent. So like there were some festivals and stuff, big festivals that would quite honestly leave out Atlanta artists and then just bring like artists from other cities and stuff to perform. And then we started seeing promoters would, get like a stronghold on like clubs and venues and stuff like that, and then create this thing where you would have to pay promoters to get on a show and stuff. And I was like, no, like I've paid my dues. I've done enough in the city that I'm not going to pay a promoter to get on a show. Whereas people would reach out to me before, to tap me to open for whoever, was coming through the city at the time. So
was that kind of like heartbreaking then? Like you like
yeah,
think you're going on this trajectory, and then
because it felt like family and a strong community before, and then it just seemed like it just got quickly kind of commodified. The scene just got quickly commodified, and we no longer really had control. We could still book like the venues we had relationships with and stuff, but that just kind of turned me off. But it was cool because at that time I started performing outside of the city.
Right.
I feel like my first performance outside of the city was St. Louis. Shout out to St. Louis. And then I got the opportunities because Soul Messiah, he used to DJ for Nappy Roots, and so he would go on tour with them, and they were the first people to take me on tour with them and allow me to open with them and stuff. And so I always like give them their flowers and credit them with allowing me to do that, because that took me from audiences that I was comfortable with and familiar with to like a whole nother thing. I was performing in Omaha, Nebraska and like places I was like, y'all like hip hop out here, you know? And they absolutely did. And it was really, really cool to be able to see, you know, parts of the country that I had previously never thought that I would get to. So it actually kind of worked out in my favor that at that time we had created so much content, and we had created like not a social media presence, but like a presence on YouTube and stuff like that with the videos we were constantly creating, that people outside of Atlanta were now starting to, we were getting exposure to people outside of Atlanta. So we're starting to get booked outside. So
you're talking about like the mindset of like people in Atlanta being like independent. So when you were coming up, was your mindset to be independent as well, or was your goals to be signed to a record deal, or what?
You know, I didn't really have a clear vision about that, because you got to think, I had just figured out that, okay, this is something I could do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still working this other career, still at the back of my mind. I ended up going back to school. So at one point I was working full time. I was in school full time, working on music full time, you know, whenever I wasn't doing work, whenever I wasn't working at my job.
Right.
And so like I was juggling all of these things because I still wasn't clear on what my path was going to be. And I was kind of one track minded, kind of singular minded in terms of creating and not really thinking about the end goal. I loved the autonomy, being independent, like being able to release whenever you wanted to. Like if we decided we wanted to release an album next week, we could do that.
Right.
You know? But then the flip side, having a label, because I'm still independent. We have a joint what is the term for it?
Partnership?
Joint venture. A joint
Yeah.
venture with Rhymesayers. But having a team of people who are pushing and promoting and are planning out launches and, you know, getting press and booking and all of that stuff, it makes it a lot easier. But also, you can't just jump out there and do whatever, whenever. You know, you can with social media and stuff. You can do stuff like that. But like, as far as like planned launches, albums, that's a lot more structured. And learning that actually lends itself well to, you know, building up interest and, you know, building audience and stuff like that. At first it was like, no, we're used to doing stuff like this. And then I was like, oh, okay, no, it actually works in our favor to do it like this, you know. But it is interesting because everybody, in a sense, is a bit of a independent artist.
Yeah.
You know, even mainstream artists, because you have to control. It's no longer just this machine that's just pushing you 24/7. You also have to generate interest and connect with your fans. I say supporters, I don't say fans, but like connect with your supporters and create social media content. And you're creating all kinds of content, whether it's you know, your photos and lives and all that stuff. So you're still essentially an independent artist in terms of you having to self-promote.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting dynamic that we're in.
So when you didn't really like understand the structure, did you feel like you were floating ever, or did you feel like you were just like having fun and weren't worried about the next step? Or how would you describe that?
I feel like I was learning and having fun. Yeah. You know, with working with Soul Messiah, because it, you know, I was on his imprint. You know, he has his independent label and has worked with like numerous artists out of Atlanta. And he was kind of like everything all in one. Like booking. At first, he was shooting videos before we got like, you know, videographer. What else? You know, of course, producing the music, DJing, like all of that. And so all I had to worry about was being creative. And it's interesting now having to be like, okay, now I got to get up and I have to plan, my reels and my TikToks and like everything. You know what I'm saying? Like it's interesting having to do that now, being out of the space of just having to write. But it's a part of, we adapt and we change and shift, and it's a part of where music is and creating yourself as an artist. So it's cool.
Would you say you and Messiah are like a duo?
A duo.
Like.
Yeah, I feel like we're a dynamic duo. I feel like we're a duo. Of course, I'm an individual artist. I am my own entity, but we always started with the idea that there would be a rapper and a DJ. Like Gangstar and Will Smith, Fresh Prince, Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff, and that I think it's important to have a very cohesive sound, and we have created together for so long. We have developed like our own kind of unique sound together. And yeah, so where you see him, you see me. Where you see me, you see him.
So one of my guests, they actually put out a documentary about their lives because they felt like when they were coming up, the like supporters or other artists or whoever didn't really realize their journey of how they became who they were. So like for you, for example, like when you were doing music, going to school and working, do you feel like other artists knew you were doing that at the same time? Or did you kind of create like an entity where people just thought you were this artist that they saw at shows and you were just having a grand old time?
Everybody in Atlanta knew what I was doing because I worked at a place where I was very visible. I worked at a very popular spot.
McDonald's.
No, but I did work in retail. And so everybody came to my particular store.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when I started rhyming, I was establishing a name for myself, and I would be in the middle of like helping someone, and people would come up and interrupt and be like, hey, are you Sa-Roc? Can I take a picture? And I'd be like, so it was so weird having these two worlds collide. Yeah. People will be playing me their music like, I got some beats for you, and I am building an end cap, sir. Like, leave me be. So it was interesting. So everybody, basically, I say all that to say, everybody in Atlanta knew that quote unquote Sa-Roc worked at this particular place because everybody shopped at this particular place.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I feel like, a whole bunch of people didn't know because I was creating so much. We were creating so much and doing so much. I don't think people fathom like how much of a world I had outside of the art, So it would be interesting to like talk about that time because I remember we have a particular album called Babylon that we did in, what was that? I feel like 2013 or 2014 or something like that. And that album was done. We were like, okay, we're going to drop this album. This is the whole independent thing, being able to drop when we want. We said we're going to challenge ourselves and we're going to drop this album in, 7 or 10 days? It was either 7 or 10 days.
Of making it.
Yeah, that we made it and put it out. And I was working full time at the time. So I would get off from work at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then punch another clock, get my caffeine and work on this album because we had this deadline to finish this album, our own self-imposed deadline. And I remember crying like one night, like, oh my God, I gotta finish this. I gotta get up early in the morning for this, but I gotta finish these 2 songs because I fell behind on this day. Now I gotta do 2 songs to, contribute to the album. So like stuff like that, I feel like it's behind the scenes stuff that people don't know, what goes into making this kind of music and these songs that y'all hear. And like, I was crying when I wrote this song.
Yeah.
This was a 3 o'clock in the morning stressed song,
Yeah. Did you ever like hand out CDs at your work?
No, I didn't. But I would, like where I worked, it was interesting. A lot of celebrities would come into the store.
Oh.
And I would never like bother any celebrities, but there was one time where I was like, I gotta get my CD to this person.
Yeah.
So I did. I got it to their security. I got the CD to the security. But like,
Oh wow, they walked in. That's funny.
So I made it a point to like keep those two things separate.
Mhm.
I really wanted to. I didn't want to. I didn't want to create any more distraction from my job because it was already kind of weird, having people like come up to me the way that they did. I wanted to make sure that like these worlds are very, very separate. So I don't want to be hustling CDs on the side.
Yeah.
Who
was like, what was your like first interaction or feature where you felt like you're like on the right track?
Dang. Let me scan. Let's see. That's a lot. So you mean like a feature or like a pivotal moment in?
I guess those are two. Maybe answer both as like individual questions.
Okay. So, dang. I feel like there are so many, but I feel like one of the major pivotal moments was in 2014 when Black Thought came to perform at a festival in Atlanta and pulled me up on stage. I feel like that changed everything for me. It's my first time meeting him. And he was like, cool, what's up? And I'm hyped, like, I met Black Thought, oh my gosh. And I thought that was done. I'm about to watch this dope performance of him on stage. And then all of a sudden, he's calling me on stage. And I was completely shook. And, I did what I came to do. And from then, like, I built a relationship with him. And that, like, a couple of months later, he asked me to perform at this event with Rhapsody and Rod Digga, whatever. So we established a working relationship from there. But I feel like at that point, I had performed at that particular festival before, but never on that main stage. Yeah. So after that, I got booked I performed with De La Soul and Rakim, and who else was on that stage? And then I was able to do it on my own on that main stage. So a lot of things kind of shifted and my status kind of elevated from that. So that was definitely a pivotal moment. And then we eventually went on to collab on a song for my album.
Sharecropper's Daughter.
The Sharecropper's Daughter, exactly. And I'm trying to think feature-wise, what was it? I mean, there was always something. It was always something happening that I feel like was like kind of positioning me to kind of move forward. But, dang. Those two might be one and the same. Like maybe the feature with him. But I'm trying to think. Let me come back to that question because I'm really trying to think. I know there were some other things before that I was like, oh my God, I made it now.
Yeah. Dang. So how do you build up a name in Atlanta? There's probably so many artists trying to do the same thing. Like, what did you do to stand out?
Just got to keep pushing. I think really what we make is dope. Like I'm going to say that first. I am a dope artist, but there were plenty of other dope artists. I think it was the consistency. And I think it was the scale at which we put out music and put out videos and put out, like we were filming videos. If you go back to some of my early videos on YouTube, I mean, the camera is shaky. It is blurry. I don't think I knew, like I hadn't memorized some of my lyrics in the video. So I wouldn't look at the camera. I didn't like looking at the camera. I was too nervous. So like it was a huge learning curve, but that didn't stop us from putting it out. Because, as an artist, we sensitive about our shit. And a lot of times we become too critical of things. We want everything to be so, so perfect. And that holds us back from producing. Yeah. And I fall victim to that quite frequently. But then because I knew how important it was for me to keep producing. And, Soul Messiah is like, he's the opposite of me. Like I'm more like, because he's been doing it for forever, but also his energy is that, I'm going to make. He's definitely a prodigious creator. But for me, I sit with things and then I write a little bit and then I leave it alone. And then I, get all emo and I mope about it. And then I come back and be like, so it takes me time to like develop something. And I think it works out in my favor. But he was very, very instrumental in like making sure that I was, come on, we got to do this. Like if a new track came out, like if somebody did a track, he would be like, all right, I got it. Now we're going to do a takeover. You know what I'm saying? You do a takeover of this beat and we're going to drop it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So he pushed me to...
Oh, you did like a J. Cole one.
Yep. I did a J. Cole one. I did the Kendrick Lamar, Control, Big Sean...
J Electronica.
You
just had a
Kendrick
show
Lamar.
with him like a month.
I did in Dallas.
That's dope.
Yeah, that was crazy. Kind of a interesting full circle moment because Soul Messiah worked with him years back. But anyway, I was saying, so I was just like creating like things that I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so bad. Why won't I look at the camera? But that, people, it still resonated with people because they were listening to just the music. And if we had not put all of this content out, like that wouldn't have pushed us to the forefront of, some of the artists who were equally as dope, who had put in the work and everything. But, and I also think that we had something special, because we worked exclusively with one another. He understood how I was growing as an artist and he was able to create music that kind of like worked to support my voice. And, he encouraged me to kind of experiment with different things that I probably didn't feel confident about and stuff like that. So that helped. And especially as a woman artist, having access to a studio, having access to a producer that you trust.
Right.
It's challenging out here being an independent woman artist on your own because, people try to try you. And I've heard like just, horror stories of producers who try to push up, and then now their music is being held hostage because they're not interested. They thinking they got a working professional relationship and then this happens. So
do you have any advice for artists in situations like that?
Written agreements for sure. And then investing in your own equipment. Learning these programs on your own. There are enough programs, like simple programs now, that everybody with a computer can, load on your phone, or if you even have GarageBand on your, like, even when I'm like practicing or whatever, I've played around with GarageBand. I don't have to do that, obviously, because I have Soul Messiah, but like there are programs that it would behoove, just the same way we get the latest phones and cameras to create our little reels and social media content. If you're an artist, especially a woman artist, like get familiar with these programs so you can do it on your own.
Mm-hmm. There's like so many dope artists that have given up along the way. Have you ever given up? And if you have, what kept you going though?
I've never given up. But I have had moments where I felt like the road was very, very challenging. And there might have been moments where I felt like I was plateauing or, and in those moments, I always had, Soul Messiah to be like, come on, now we're about to do this next project. And it was always like, I feel like there was the universe always working in my favor. Like whenever I would push through one of those moments and, still release something, or despite all of the things that were happening in my life, or, maybe I felt like I was being blocked or I had a creative block or whatever. Whenever I push through that and push through my comfort zone, I feel like the universe would always be like, okay, well, now you have this show here. And guess what? Such and such person heard your music and wants to collab. And guess what? Your first European tour, all of these things would just happen to remind me that I was on the right path and to keep pushing. I'm always reminded of that meme. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like a little cartoon. And it's this man, he's like hammering through like this rock or this mountain or whatever. And he's like, he gives up. And you see that there's like this really thin piece of wall. And on the other side, there's all this gold. And so I'm reminded of that. Like, just when you think that you're going to drop everything and it's not worth it or whatever, there's something just on the other side of it. Even if it's not like a physical thing, it's spiritually rewarding to honor your craft and honor what you have to contribute to the world. You know what I mean? And if that's through creative expression, you have to keep giving that a voice and giving that a platform.
And did you always have like support from your family, or did it take a while for them to be supportive?
It was interesting. You know, my parents wanted me to do something in medicine, or they wanted them degrees and everything. So of course it was a big disappointment when I left school.
Yeah.
But I can say when I first started, and not when I first started, but when they saw that I was actually like, I had physical copies of music, because that makes it real for people. Like, oh man, like she actually has a CD. It's not just, you know, she's recording some stuff or she's performing at open mics and stuff. She actually has a CD to sell. So my father, who was like one of the biggest opposers of me dropping out of school and stuff, he drove a cab. He started like purchasing CDs for me and like giving them out to his customers.
Wow.
And be like, this is my daughter, you know, or he would play my music nonstop in his cab and try to go to the local radio stations and drop them off to some of the DJs he knew and stuff. And so there was always still like this fear, because he was an artist, a visual artist, a painter and a graphic artist. So, and he wasn't able to pursue his dreams. So I think he felt that being an artist and being able to sustain yourself and take care of yourself and not be swindled by, you know, he'd heard horror stories. He was in the 60s and 70s, whatever. So he heard about the record labels that would, you know, give the artists a car and then be making millions off of their music and stuff like that, Black artists specifically. And so he had all of that in his mind, like, you know, make sure, be careful out here, you know, don't let anybody, you know, steal your creative property, intellectual property or whatever. So like, but he would be like at my shows and stuff, super proud. So it was interesting. So like there was the fear. So there was definitely support, but then there was always like, okay, but when are you going to do the real thing? When are you going to get the real career? Like, this is cool, but when are you going to go back to school? You still interested in medicine, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Dang. So how has the pandemic treated you? Is this the first like in-person interview since COVID? Because I know you've done a lot of virtual ones.
Wait a minute.
If so, that's something to celebrate.
Yeah. I think this, I know. I think it might be, actually.
Well, I'm honored if it is. Either way, I'm
yeah, other than like, you know, like after festivals and stuff and have people. But yeah, this is the first like in studio interview. So thank you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it has been interesting. Especially for me, because I really like performing and connecting with like supporters and stuff after shows and stuff like that. It's just a different energy. When I get on stage, like I'm able to be free and just reinterpret the things that I've written and recorded in the way that I play them out on stage and stuff. So that was interesting. But there were still like streams of shows and stuff outside of the virtual space.
Right.
There were still like some events and stuff that were happening in different parts of the world. At like in 2021, nothing was happening in 2020, but like in 2021. But of course it was interesting adjusting, because right at the beginning of the pandemic, I was on a tour with Rhapsody.
That's so dope.
And I know it was amazing. But the last show they were supposed to do was canceled because that's when a lot of the states were instating like the 100, you can have 100 people. The cap on public gatherings and stuff. And we were like, oh man, this is something now, you know, because we were hearing wind of it when we were on tour, and it seems like the states that were affected by it, where we would just be leaving that state and we'd be like, okay, then they would say, Washington is shut down, like no one's coming in, stuff like that. So it was interesting. But then right when I was scheduled to come back from the Rhapsody tour, that next week I was supposed to do a European tour. And so that was done. And then I heard an artist say to me, being on tour is exhilarating and interesting. But sometimes when you get back home, because you give so much of yourself and because that space is so rewarding and it feels so, it's almost like a drug.
Yeah.
Because all the endorphins are, firing up and it just feels good. When you get home, it's kind of easy to slip into a space that not depression or anything like that, but just like a sadness, a feeling of sadness, like you miss, as welcoming as home is, you miss being out on the road and you miss performing. And that combined with the fact that, the world was, it was a scary place. We didn't know what was happening. It was interesting. I ended up I was supposed to be writing at the time. I ended up just like being still for months, trying to reignite like my meditation practice and go after like everybody was doing, like, okay, I'm going to learn a new thing now, but really keeping it really inward, like doing a lot of reflecting and stuff like that. So after I got over my initial my initial shakeup, which took a couple months for me to deal with, like my whole world is now changed. Everybody's world was, but it was interesting to navigate, and I had to really reflect on what it meant to be an artist and who I was outside of me as an artist, who I was outside of Sa-Roc, and facing that can be kind of challenging.
Fuck yeah, it's like another entity, and then
right.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So that was fun.
Damn. So what did you learn? So did you learn anything like cool though? Like, not saying that's not cool, but did you learn?
I started playing the guitar.
Ooh.
Which is something I always wanted to do. I'm by no means proficient, but I got a little guitar and I started taking guitar lessons, and it was so dope. Like I love the acoustic guitar, and me creating music outside of my voice was cool, and it was empowering. So I started learning that. Read a lot.
So you're like into sci-fi books, you said, or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm into very specific authors.
Okay.
I'll say, like Octavia Butler is like, she actually passed away in Washington, but
which one? Like this Washington?
Octavia Butler, yeah, your Washington.
Wow.
She actually passed away here, but she's from California. But she is an incredible Black woman speculative fiction author, and who I just derive so much inspiration from. Like she lives in my head rent free. Literally. Like I remember seeing something on social media where she literally wrote out all the things she eventually manifested in her career. Wow. She had a notebook and she said, I want to have a best-selling book by, this age. I want to have done this. I want to have released blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking in awe, like she literally manifested her dreams. And I constantly go back to a quote of hers where she talks about practice, the importance of practice and habit as opposed to inspiration. Because I think that as artists, we think, oh, I'm supposed to be just creatively inspired all the time, and that is what makes me an artist. And if I'm not, then I'm not a true artist. I'm not a true creative, because I'm supposed to wake up and breathe art, right? And so that's something that I struggle with, because for me, I'm definitely more of a logical person. I have to really get into a space of creating and feeling confident enough about what I'm creating. Because I didn't grow up being interested in hip hop. I didn't grow up rapping, and
That's so interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so like I feel like all of my peers were like, I've been rapping since I was 7 years old, And that definitely wasn't the case for me. So And I've always excelled at like academics and felt that my creative side was, a bit stifled or whatever. But I was validating to hear her say, like, you're not always going to be inspired. Habit is the thing that's going to help you perfect and hone your craft. She says, she starts off the quote, and I'm going to be paraphrasing. She starts off the quote saying, first, forget inspiration. Habit is more reliable. Habit is more dependable. Like that, habit is the thing is going to get you to become basically a better artist. She didn't say that, but that's essentially what she's saying. In the end, that is what's going to sustain you. And I hear that often from, vocal coaches to singers or whatever. Like, you have to practice 24/7. You have to get in those 10,000 hours. We hear about the 10,000 hour rule or whatever. That's what elevates a creative to, I don't want to say legend, but helps them create a legacy.
Right.
So.
Have you seen the King Richard movie yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh.
I haven't seen it. Is it good?
Yeah, I watched it the other night, and just to like see how King Richard, if you guys haven't seen that movie, is it's about Venus and Serena Williams' dad. And like during the movie, they talk about like how he planned from like the very beginning to like where they are now, like his kids' like entire career path. And like how that was kind of like troublesome for some people, being like, you're teaching your daughters how to play tennis like day in, day out. Like they're probably failing in school, which they weren't though. Just like kind of like his creativeness was like through his kids. And like how there was like some backlash between that, but like he was like, Venus is going to be the number one tennis player, and then Serena's going to be like the best that ever existed. And it was just that movie was so inspiring. It was,
yeah, I need to check that out.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to watch this on my watch list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is so, that's a talent in itself to have the vision.
Yeah.
To kind of execute a plan, execute a dream, and to pull out the best in people, And it may feel like I've had moments where I felt like, oh, I'm being overworked or I need to take a break or whatever. But had I taken a break, I might have missed out on a particular opportunity. Had I not dropped, forever when I did, would I have gotten, this European tour? Would I have been, been performing at the London Jazz Club? Like, who had that person, would that person have seen me, that promoter, that booker or whatever? You know what I mean?
Did you hold on to that song for a bit, or?
I'm sorry?
Did you hold on to Forever for a bit, or?
I had it, well, I was holding on to it until like, the album was going to drop or closer to the album dropping. But because it was taking a while for me to write, I was dealing with my creative little issues and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to say, that we were like, let's just drop it. So one, you can have some content, and then also, I think it's necessary right now.
Yeah.
And we did, and it had legs.
Yeah, it did. I have two more questions.
Yes.
First, I think when just a normal person or even like an up-and-coming artist sees an artist signed to a record label, that artist must be like a crazy millionaire or whatever, right? So what is your advice to artists when it comes to like you even being on like a record label? Do you like still need to diversify your funds? And if you do, what are some cool ideas, but like some just like ideas on how to do that? Like, are you an artist who's able just to focus on being an artist, or do you have to have other ways of making money as well? Or
now I'm actually in a position where I'm able to just focus on art, but I absolutely think it's important to have several streams of income, and to diversify. And I hate the idea of branding, but it's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It just really is. When you do a particular thing, you naturally create like this imprint, and it's important for you now to, in order to grow, is to I hate to use the word capitalize off of, but people want to see or to have inside knowledge on other aspects of you outside of what it is that you make. You know, whether if you're a singer or a rapper or if you are a designer or whatever, they're now wanting more with social media. We're able to see like people's lives. So like what I want to know what that product you use in your hair is.
Yeah.
And I want to know, you know, that dope little outfit you have on, you styled it or you created, you made those pants or whatever. How can I get a pair of those pants? So we got to really, as an artist, you got to capitalize off of those things that are unique to your personhood as well as unique to yourself as you know, as a creator. And making sure that people are able to kind of tap in to, you know, different parts of your lifestyle. Of course, keeping private what you want to keep private. But I think we're in a unique opportunity to be able to showcase the other things that we do and that we're capable of, and bringing people in that world. You know, if you have the autonomy and agency to do so, you can make money off of that. And that's an important thing to do, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. You know, we don't know if I'm not manifesting this, but I'm not affirming this to the universe. Universe, are you listening? But we don't know if we're gonna get polyps on our vocal cords, or you know, anything could happen where this is no longer profitable for you.
Right.
So you have to be able to pivot, and you have to have things at the ready to be able to sustain yourself. And I think more and more people are looking to doing that. So it's really important.
So my last question is, I'm trying to decide, do you consider yourself like a hippie?
A hippie?
Yeah. You know, like, because you're talking about holistics, and then you're talking about the universe. And I've been trying to pinpoint if you can
I definitely do not fit in the box. So I'm influenced by a lot of things. But I will say that I had the Woodstock soundtrack on repeat when I was younger, and I definitely am into Eastern spirituality, and I definitely feel that there are things outside of our physical, actually outside of our senses, that we are connected to.
Like ghosts?
Like ghosts?
Yeah.
No, I think universal energy, like energy that like courses through every single living thing, on the physical plane and the spiritual plane. Like, we're all connected to that, and there's various ways to tap into that. And what we speak is very powerful. You know, what we think is very powerful, and we have to be very intentional about how we walk through this world. Everything has an effect, karmically. So I wouldn't call myself a hippie, but I definitely think that I'm in tune with, you know, or I'm attempting to be in tune with the deeper wisdom of the universe.
What about like gemstones? Are you into gemstones?
I am.
See, I just feel like...
You can't put me in a box, NAST.
Oh my... Okay, what's your favorite gemstone? That's the final question. What's your favorite gemstone?
Amethyst.
And why?
Because amethyst allows you to tap into the highest parts of yourself, your highest spiritual manifestations, psychic energy. I don't know. I'm not into it for that, but being able to, that same thing I was talking about, it allows you to like amplify the messages from the universe, and being able to tap into that space, that cosmic space, the all. And that's really important to me, because it's so much, this universe is so much bigger. What we don't know is so much bigger than what we know. And to be able to draw off of that energy and that power is really important to empowering our own selves on this physical plane.
There we go. Nice answer. What is the easiest way for people to reach you?
Man, my website, Saroc.com, Saroc.com. And then I am probably most active on Instagram, but I'm on all these things, y'all. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. But just type in Sa-Roc and you'll find me.
And is there anything you want to promote?
I have a show tomorrow at High Dive. That's February 17th? February 17th. with the artist Rail, special guest, and it's going to be dope.
Oh, shit. I know that guy.
Oh, really?
Oh, I need to have him on the podcast still. Yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, come on, Rail, come on through.
There we go.
But yeah, so that's going to be really dope. And this entire little mini Pacific Northwest tour is going to continue with Portland on the 18th and Eugene on the 19th. So come through, y'all.
Hell yeah. Is there any final wisdom you want to leave the audience with?
Final wisdom. I think what the entire theme of this thing is sticking to your vision and continue to work on your vision. And as you work on the things that you want to manifest, you uncover the best parts of yourself. So it's not just a one-sided journey. Remember that you are part of the journey. You are informing the journey. And as you grow exponentially in whatever you choose to do, whether it's artistic expression or whether it's another kind of career, you know, what you pour into that, make sure, be mindful that you're pouring into yourself as well.
There we go. It's the NAST podcast with
Saroc.
And we did it.